Welcome back to Novel Writing 101, the 21-week course where I teach you how to write the first draft of your novel. It's week 14, and today my advice for you is going to cover how to embrace change and update your outline. Let's get into it. Like I said, it's week 14 in the course, and it's also week 10 of Section B, Writing and Execution. We're over 3 months into this course, you guys, and I am very proud of you sticking with it this far. If your writing process is anything like mine, I know the last 14 weeks have been full of ups and downs where you might feel like you're on top of the world one week, and the next you can't even get a word on the page. Unfortunately, that's just part of the creative process, love it or hate it. But today I wanted to give you guys some advice for how to kind of work through these roadblocks you may be encountering and how to embrace change. Embracing change can either be really easy or really difficult depending on your personality. For instance, if you're more of a pantser, you may have no problem at all shifting mid-chapter or mid-book and deciding, oh, okay, this idea for the plot, I'm going to scrap it and go with something completely different. But if you're really relying on a rigorous outline, embracing change may feel like the floor is falling out beneath you. But it doesn't have to be that scary. Embracing change can be using what you already have, outline-wise, idea-wise, and kind of just making adjustments to make the story better overall. Change can be as elaborate and overhauling or as minute as you want it to be. An example of this is maybe you're halfway through writing your first draft and you realize that your main character feels a little stagnant. Maybe they don't have that great of a character arc yet and they just keep going through the same things and are not really getting pushed outside of their comfort zone. You might then go back to your outline or just the ideas floating in your head and say, okay, what can I do? What can I introduce to the main character to kind of shift something in their character? You can think of embracing change this way in terms of plot structure. So maybe you're adding another pinch point or conflict or something that just moves the story forward but also disrupts it a bit. Or maybe the change has nothing at all to do with the plot. Maybe you realized, hey, I think I'm going to actually make my character a different gender. Maybe you realized while writing the first draft that their character would be much better suited to being a woman. Or maybe you want to look at it in terms of age or race or childhood trauma. Maybe you're like, okay, it would make more sense for my main character to be acting like this now if they went through something like this in the past. So maybe your idea of embracing change is adding a bunch of backstory for your main character to kind of flesh out a more robust personality. Or maybe you're realizing something about side characters that really need to change. Does your villain need to be more of a villain? Or do you want them to be likable? Maybe things are going crazy and you're just bursting with ideas and you're like, I'm going to add an entire new subplot. Maybe these two characters that were very much on the side to begin with are getting more into the main storyline and you want to flesh out their subplot so it integrates. Again, you can embrace change on a large scale or a small scale. It's really up to you. And maybe this far in the writing journey, you haven't had anything come up that you want to change. And that's totally fine. You don't need to rethink everything all the time. But when you do have a moment where you're sitting down writing and you think, would this be better off if I changed this? I want you to really sit with that and don't get caught up in like, oh, if I change this, then I have to change a bunch of things in the rewrites and the editing phase. And do I really want to go to that trouble? I want you to just focus on, if I change this thing, is it going to make my story better? Am I going to feel prouder about this story? Am I going to relate to it more? Am I going to express myself more through this story if I tell it in this new way? That's all that should matter. Even if you want to flesh out these changes in your first draft and you have to add 3 weeks to your writing process, that's okay. Write the story how you want to write it, regardless of what changes might sway you off the path. Now that we've covered how to embrace change, I want to segue into what that means when it comes to updating your outline. Now, though I have a rule about going back and editing things that you've already worked on, this does not apply to your outline. Your outline should be a living document that helps you best tell your story. Now, regardless of what kind of outline you have, if it's a more robust document with lots of structure, or my version of just kind of a word vomit of everything I want to happen, you can always make changes to your outline regardless of how far along you are on writing your first draft. If you have an idea in the moment and you're like, oh, writing chapter 13 really had me think of something that should happen later in the book, maybe you want to go back to your outline and say, okay, actually in chapter 22, I think this should come back into the story because I mentioned it in chapter 13 and I want it to come full circle so the reader knows that this is important. Feel free to add in whatever new notes you want to in your outline or restructure things entirely. Your outline, like everything else in the writing process, is for you. So if you need to tweak things, add things, remove things just to keep everything clear in your mind as you're writing week by week, do it. Your outline should be a living document. It is your reference and your guide and your tool to show you what is happening throughout the story, whether that be by chapter, by plot point, by act, so you have a good sense of what's happening and you can build upon everything that's going on. So update your outline to your heart's content. I promise it'll only help you in the long run. That's it for today, you guys. I just wanted to give you some high-level advice and help you understand that as you're going through the writing process, things are likely going to come up that are either going to change the plot, change characters, or have you think in a different way. It's kind of how creative process works. You're always like having synapses of new ideas. And so I want you to just be able to embrace that change, roll with it, update your outline, don't let it be a big deal, and just keep going through your first draft with these new ideas, these new insights, these changes, and realize that it's okay and you're moving in the right direction. Your homework for this week is the same it's been for all the weeks prior in Section B. I want you to keep working on your first draft and hit whatever goals you've set for yourself in your personal contract. Next week, we're going to talk about raising the stakes and conflict, which I'm really excited about. So in the meantime, happy writing, and I'll see you next week.